Breaking tonight, ABC News suspends Brian Ross, its award-winning investigative journalist, over serious error in his Trump-Flynn report. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us and for making Justice #1 again last Saturday. A bombshell just a short time ago from ABC News. Chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross suspended for 4 weeks without pay. This after the veteran journalist reported Friday that then-candidate Donald Trump directed Michael Flynn, to contact Russians during the election campaign. ABC News later in the day clarified that it was not during the election campaign, but instead during the transition after the election. I'll have reaction to this developing story from Governor Mike Huckabee as well as my political panel. But first, my opening statement. How much is your child's life worth on the open market? How about on the open political market? Kate Steinle's family found out this week in San Francisco nothing. Absolutely nothing. The agenda of the lawless left was satisfied when a jury acquitted Jose Inez Garcia Zarate of all homicide charges, murder and involuntary manslaughter. And the sanctuary zealots of San Francisco are still patting themselves on the back. It's unfortunate that Kate Steinle, a beautiful 32-year-old young woman, simply walking along a pier on a sunny day with her dad, was gunned down by an illegal 7-time convicted felon, legally deported 5 times, that she had to leave this world in her father's arms, begging him to help her. She had the right, as an American citizen, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. She had the right to be protected by her government. Instead, Zarate, and not God, decided when she would die. Instead, San Francisco decided his criminal rights were more important than her safety. Kate never wanted to be a part of a national debate or at the center of a law enforcement dilemma. So how did this happen? It was in March of 2015 that Zarate had just finished serving 4 years for illegal reentry into the United States after having been deported 5 times. Conditions of release that he not commit any additional crimes and not possess any firearm, both of which he did. Upon his release, the Federal Bureau of Prisons sent him to San Francisco to face additional charges, a city they knew was sanctuary for illegal criminal aliens. And despite ICE's request for them to detain him for deportation, San Francisco released him into the community without notifying the feds. After the shooting, Zarate, the dirtbag, admitted to police that he fired a weapon he found wrapped in a T-shirt, saying he was just aiming at a seal, in which case he would legally be guilty of felony murder or at the very least involuntary manslaughter. But he also told police that he stepped on the gun accidentally. The defense, however, at the trial said something totally different, that he found the gun wrapped in a T-shirt and fired it accidentally when he picked it up. The jury was told nothing of his criminal record, his illegal status, or his repeated violations of our laws, 14 times the way I count it, before the murder. And so he sat at that trial, blanketed in the presumption of innocence and cloaked with all the due process that our Constitution provides, not to mention food, housing, medical care, lawyers, translators, and investigators that you paid for. 32-year-old innocent victim Kate Steinle, cloaked in a very different kind of blanket, 6 feet underground, with no voice and no rights. No appearance by Kate other than in cold, sterile autopsy photos. There's a reason it's called the criminal justice system and not the victim justice system. It's all about the criminal. That the jury even acquitted Zarate of involuntary manslaughter is not only a moral outrage, it's a legal one. Involuntary manslaughter occurs when one acts with criminal negligence and causes the death of another. Picking up a gun wrapped in a T-shirt, and the unfortunate truth in all of these murder cases is that we only get the defendant's version since the victim has been silenced by death, is classic reckless behavior that creates a high risk of bodily injury or death. Significant is the fact that the jury in deliberations asked to see the gun, a 6 Sauer P239, to assess how difficult it would be to have it accidentally go off. Folks, the trigger pull is central to this killing. Judge Samuel Feng, however, denied the request. If you know anything about a 6 Sauer, you know that it has a difficult trigger pull requiring between 6 and 10 pounds. It is drop safe, which is the reason that most elite military and government units purchase this weapon. This double action pull is a favorite of Navy SEALs. It's a gun designed to not go off by accident. Folks, let me give it to you straight. This was not a verdict based on truth and justice and facts, but on leftist rejection of law and order agenda of this nation. Now, I have spent more than 3 decades prosecuting crimes and sitting on the bench. And although the defense denied this had anything to do with immigration, they crowed that it was a vindication for immigrants.
Nothing about Mr. Garcia Zarate's ethnicity, nothing about his immigration status, nothing about the fact that he is born in Mexico had any relevance as to what happened on July 1st, 2015. I believe today is a vindication for the rights of immigrants.
They contradict themselves. And then the defense proceeds to unmask their own hate and prejudice against our president and vice president.
Let me just remind them that they are themselves under investigation by a special prosecutor in Washington, D.C., and they may themselves soon avail themselves of the presumption of innocence and beyond a reasonable doubt standard.
And with all the criticism and outrage and the hashtags boycott San Francisco, the Bay City actually digs its heels in, reaffirming its sanctuary city status, and the state of California trumpets its state sanctuary status. The only sanctuary, though, is for the criminal illegal. So what to do? Number one, since sanctuary cities and states are created by elected politicians, they need to be voted out of office. Number two, build the wall. I showed you on horseback how open and porous the border is, which explains how a dirtbag like this would be able to cross 6 times after being deported. And if there's any problem with getting that wall built, do what you have to do to get it done. If necessary, attach DACA to it. Those born in this country and who swear to abide by our laws are quite different from these illegal criminals. Let me be clear, this is about illegals who are criminals. Number three, the federal government and Justice Department must do everything it can to deprive these cities, counties, and states of any law enforcement monies. Do not give them grant money, period. Number four, if you're a local or state cop, you have an obligation to protect the innocent, follow the truth, be true to your oath, and arrest the criminal. But if you're working in a sanctuary jurisdiction being directed by some left-wing liberal to instead protect the illegal criminals, directed to not share information with your federal law enforcement brothers and sisters, directed to not honor a federal detainer, well, then you've got a decision to make. And this is a tough one for you, and you can't figure out what your sworn obligation is, then as a cop, you need to get the hell out of law enforcement. Number five, you must notify ICE as soon as you can of the release of the criminal alien for whom there is a want. And I don't care what you have to do to get that done. Do it quietly. Do it anonymously. Do it behind closed doors, underground, through a special hotline, email, or carrier pigeon. Just do it. Americans have the right to know when they're in danger, since these sanctuary bozos treat illegal criminals different than American criminals. Maybe law-abiding states ought to clear out their prisons and send their criminals to the sanctuary states. Since they're already open to taking other countries' criminals, the least they can do is take American ones. I spent my life on the battleground where the fight between good and evil unfolds every day. This is about the violence visited upon innocent victims. It's about good and evil. This is about protecting Americans and not forcing them to reside with criminals in their midst. Take a look at these faces. No families should ever have to suffer like these families, like Kate Steinle's families, like countless American families, because of the murderous acts of criminal, illegal aliens. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hashtag Judge Jeanine. Joining me now with reaction to my opening statement and all of the developing news of the night, former Arkansas governor and Fox News contributor Mike Huckabee. Good evening, Governor.
Judge, thank you, and a great opening and a great reminder that Kate Steinle would not have died had we simply avoided these sanctuary cities, enforced our existing law. We don't have to pass a new one, just enforce what we've already agreed is the law. And what a tragedy and an unnecessary one. It's just impossible not to be heartbroken over her death and this absolutely absurd judgment that came down from San Francisco this week.
You know, Governor, that really was my first question. I mean, is her death attributable to these policies and to the liberal agenda? But what do you think the jury acquittal? You know, that involuntary manslaughter is a no-brainer. Why would the jury acquit this man on what is, without a doubt, a clear involuntary manslaughter charge?
It appears that one of the real failures in this trial was that the trial judge disallowed what would have been very critical evidence for the jury to hear. I know a lot of people are going to be critical and maybe condemning of the jury, but you got to remember that the jury, and you know this better than anybody as a longtime judge, the jury can only make their decision based on what they're able to hear, that which is admissible. And it appears that the prosecutors attempted to provide information, but were prevented from doing it because the judge kept saying, no, you can't bring in his past background. The fact that this guy had been deported repeatedly and kept coming back.
But honestly, Governor,
those are the things that the jury should have known.
Well, honestly, you know, there could be certainly a legal argument that it may not be relevant, but I think the issue of the gun is the most concrete, that gun could not have gone off accidentally. And there are those who say that maybe the prosecution overtried the murder, that he wasn't intending to kill anyone, that they should have spent more time on the involuntary manslaughter. That gun, that Sig Sauer, and I have several guns, that's not a gun that easily goes off. But I think it's even more than that. I think it's a jury that, you know, is proud. 6 men, 6 women, 3 immigrants on that jury, you know, is proud of that liberal kind of leftist agenda. But I want to go to something else. Michael Flynn has pled guilty to lying to the FBI. So now we've got what's his name, Paul Manafort on tax issues, along with gay tax issues, having nothing to do with the president or the campaign. Now you've got Michael Flynn lying to the FBI, the same crime that what's her name, the cook, what's her name?
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart.
Yeah, Martha
Thank
Stewart.
you. Went to jail for, again, having nothing to do with Donald Trump and no underlying crime that is connected to it. And, you know, everyone is trying to suggest that, oh, this is bad news for Donald Trump. Do you think that it is?
I don't really think it is, because what they've so far been able to get is that Michael Flynn did something that we already knew that he did, because that's what he got fired for after 25 days as National Security Advisor. In that case, it was not telling the full truth to Vice President Mike Pence. So we knew this already. But the tragedy for me, and I like Mike Flynn, I think he is a man who spent his entire adult life sacrificing and serving this country, working his way up through the ranks of our military, a very distinguished and honored military member. I hate to see a person's entire life work basically marred and changed by this incident.
Yeah,
I'm
listen,
not justifying
I
what he
want
did.
to ask you about
what
this.
He did was
Brian
wrong.
Ross on NBC said that Flynn is prepared to testify against the president, and as a candidate, Donald Trump ordered him or directed him to make contact with the Russians. They then pull it back and they say they clarify it that Donald Trump didn't tell him to do that. Was that false reporting, or is that a clarification?
Brian Ross, from my experience in dealing with him during the time when I was a candidate, is one of the most recklessly dishonest reporters I've ever dealt with. And, Judge, I've dealt with quite a few. He is a person for whom I have very little respect because he has a story he wants to prove, and then he goes about in reckless disregard often of the facts in order to just keep pushing until he can try to somehow make people believe. I'm glad he got suspended. ABC has suspended him without pay for 4 weeks. Probably should have gotten fired for it because, I mean, he had an impact on even the stock market, for heaven's sake.
350 points. We're going to talk about that with the panel. Governor Huckabee, thanks so much for being with us this evening.
Always a pleasure, Judge.
All right. And Dan Bongino and Chris Hahn on the panel tonight. And that's always a lot of fun. Plus, I'll show you one of the most outrageous things I saw on TV this week. And next, I'll go more in depth on the Kate Steinle case with RNC committee member and San Francisco attorney Harmeet Dillon. Interesting stuff ahead. Justice rolls on in a moment. Welcome back to Justice. The verdict in the Kate Steinle murder trial continues to cause outrage across the country. Joining me now with reaction is RNC committee spokeswoman, committee woman from California and San Francisco, attorney Harmeet Dillon. All right, good evening, Harmeet. I want you to take a listen.
Happy to be here.
It's good to have you here as always. Attorney General Jeff Sessions last night on Tucker Carlson talked about what to do with the Zarate. Maybe we can take a listen.
The fundamental question we've got to deal with, and it's time for this country to get its head on straight. These cities should not be protecting criminal aliens, people who come into the country unlawfully, then they commit another crime, and then they hide that individual.
All right. As an attorney who's involved in this kind of stuff, I mean, what can we do? Is there a way to somehow prosecute those locals for some kind of conspiracy for assisting in the protection of criminal illegals from a lawful arrest and prosecution?
I think the Department of Justice really needs to look at that, and that's really up to the Attorney General to direct his Department of Justice Civil Rights Division to see whether criminal illegal aliens are being afforded superior rights to our own citizen criminal suspects, or the citizens, obviously. I think that's clear from this outcome. But what we have is a one-sided system. So what happened here is Garcia Zarate was delivered to San Francisco authorities because San Francisco had an outstanding arrest warrant for him.
Right.
So the federal government respected the sovereignty and the request of the state of California. That was probably a mistake in retrospect because the federal government should have known in 2015 that a 20-year-old drug warrant was not going to be pursued by San Francisco and that they were going to let him go. And so, you know, on the other side, San Francisco has had a long-standing, decades-long refusal to honor federal requests for detainers. There are many other cities in in California, and there are 300 sanctuary cities in the state of the United States. So as of January 1st, 2018, our governor has made our entire state of California a sanctuary state. So the feds have to be very careful in honoring those warrants and releasing people back into California.
Harmeet, you're right. The feds have to be careful about, and I agree with you. You got a 20-year-old case, you know it's going to be dismissed. Why bother to bring the guy there? But at the same time, what do you do if you're a law-abiding citizen living in California and the state it goes into effect January 1? What do you do about those people that have put this into effect? I mean, do you vote them out of office? I mean, what do you do?
Well, you got to vote him out of office. I mean, we have a one-party state here, literally. That's why we have this problem, and these liberal politicians have blood on their hands. So there's really no other way to put it. This lady's death is due to San Francisco and now California politicians' refusal to honor the law. And citizens of California really have to draw the line. We have 3 million illegal aliens in our midst. Most of them are not criminals in terms of being killers or murderers. They've broken the law. But, you know, it's not tolerable to have this situation in San Francisco or in any city or in any jurisdiction here in California. And like you said in your opening, I think law enforcement officials have to look in the mirror and say, am I really going to be able as a law enforcement official to give superior treatment and rights to a criminal illegal alien wanted by the feds and let that person into my community where he may commit a crime and carnage may occur? I think it's deeply irresponsible for any of them to follow that law, and I hope there's some civil disobedience in that regard.
Well, Harmeet, and I also hope that, you know, although Garate has probably almost served all of his time on the one count he was found guilty of based upon the time he has spent in waiting for his trial, I'm hoping that the Department of Justice does file additional charges for the violation of the federal statute. Harmeet Dillon, thanks so much for being with us. All right. And they're back and ready for action. Next, Dan Bongino, Chris Hahn, my political panel, ready to do battle in the name of justice. You can't miss it. They're ready for action. Thanks. Breaking tonight, President Trump on a tweet storm right now. The president, within the past few minutes, tweeting about General Michael Flynn, saying Flynn's life is destroyed, while crooked Hillary Clinton, on that famous FBI holiday interrogation, lied many times and nothing happened to her. It's a rigged system or a double standard. Then the president continues, many people are asking what the Justice, in quotes, Department will do about the fact that Hillary deleted those 33,000 emails. And the president also just tweeting about the news that ABC News has suspended journalist Brian Ross for a report Trump called horrendously inaccurate and dishonest. A lot from the president, all in the past few minutes. Joining me now, my all-star political panel for the night, former Secret Service agent, best-selling author Dan Bongino, along with former aide to Schumer, radio talk show host Chris Hahn. All right, guys. Dan, I'm going to ask you first. Isn't the president right? Number one, Hillary Clinton lies to the FBI, and I'll tell you why, Chris. Don't even start. She either knew she had classified emails, or what was her reason for deleting 33,000 of them? What do you say to this, Dan?
Judge, in some of the email chains we're talking about from Hillary, people say in the email chain, strip out the markings if you're going to resend it. Of course they knew this stuff was classified. Do you blame Trump for just airing the feelings, by the way, of tens of millions of Americans right now, Judge, who feel like there's a bifurcated justice system, a justice system for those in the Democrat Party with political power, like the Clintons, and then a justice system for everyone else in the GOP and average everyday working Americans who have to get hunted down like dogs because they won a national election in an upset over Hillary? Chris? It's a disgrace.
You know, I mean, I think America's had enough of this distraction about Hillary Clinton. They see right through it.
No, they haven't.
The president's national security advisor pled guilty to a felony yesterday and is fully cooperating with the special prosecutor.
He was forced to plead guilty for lying. She was cut loose for lying. And then we just find out that a top FBI investigator was thrown off Mueller's team because he was writing anti-Trump tweets with his girlfriend, and he was married, while he was on the case on Hillary Clinton's case.
Respectfully, Your Honor, nobody takes a plea to a felony who's been a 3-star general unless he's cutting a deal for something much worse.
Oh,
and the only reason Mueller's giving him a deal.
Hold on. Do you have inside information?
Hold on, Judge. You know this because you were a prosecutor. I know this because I worked in DA's office. And the
What'd
only
you do
reason
in the
he's taking
DA's
that
office?
deal, I worked in I was an intern when I was in law school.
Oh, you were an intern. Oh, you clearly were on the inside. Go ahead, Dan. Hit it.
Yes.
Yeah, Chris, Chris, listen, you know I love debating you, but as always, you are so unbelievably wrong here that I can't believe you're even saying this on cable news. People can see this, you know. People plea all the time to 1001, lying to federal agents, by the way, when they're being hunted down by the government and the government wants them. You know how I know that? I was a federal agent. I was at arraignments and initial appearances with magistrate judges who looked at some of the agents and said, you're charging this guy with 1001? Don't tell me it doesn't happen. It happens all the time.
Hey,
and the bottom line is the government
wanted
wanted Flynn and they wanted the team, and that's what they got him with.
Look,
this nonsense 1001
The government wants somebody bigger than Flynn, and that's why they gave Flynn a deal.
Wait.
And
No,
Flynn
hold on. Judge,
and the president, by the way,
Chris,
the president knows this.
One at a time. One at a time.
Chris, where's the scheme? Andy McCarthy I promise I'll let you go, but Andy McCarthy brought up a great point in National Review, former federal prosecutor. Why has nobody pled guilty to an actual scheme yet?
Right.
Show me the money. Where's the beef here, Chris?
Guys, you both know, you've both worked in law enforcement, you both know that this is the tip of the iceberg.
No,
you know that
don't tell me what I know. Give me facts. Don't tell me what I know. Tell me a fact. What is the underlying crime? What's the underlying crime?
How many times in your career as a prosecutor have you created
Give me
deals
facts.
to get
Don't
higher
ask
up
me
people
questions.
Look, the fact is that a 3-star general who was yelling "lock her up" pled guilty to a felony yesterday. A person who was the national security advisor who the president was
Here's the
warned
problem,
not
Chris.
to hire.
Here's the problem. When they don't have an underlying crime, they get him for lying, and then ABC and the mainstream media jumps on it and creates the underlying crime and says that the president told him to contact Russia during the campaign, and then ABC at the end says, "Oh, a little clarification." Hogwash. That wasn't a clarification. That was false reporting. That was a lie. Because they don't have an underlying crime. Go ahead, Bongino.
You know who doesn't?
Wait. No, Chris, time out. You said something before. You go, oh, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, Chris, the floor is yours. Tell us what the iceberg is, please. We've now had 3 arrests. We've got 2 fibbers. We've got 2 people arrested on federal charges of fibbing, and we got a guy engaged in bad business dealings before he knew Trump. Please inform our entire audience about what the iceberg actually is. We'd love to hear it.
Dan, if this was Hillary Clinton's national security advisor who pled guilty yesterday, you would be losing your mind.
Tell us what we know or what we're going to do. Give us facts. What did Flynn do that has anything to do with Donald Trump and Russia? Yes. Give me a fact.
I don't think
one fact.
I don't think it matters.
It doesn't? No, you're right. It doesn't matter to the mainstream media. It doesn't matter to the left.
Flynn was privy to every conversation the president and his senior team had for 2 years.
That's right. Then make him plead to something involved with that.
He should be very worried right now. They should be very worried right now.
Nor do they need to be. When ABC has to make up the news, then there's nothing to worry about. Dan, hit it. Last word.
Yeah, Chris, you just said, well, you'd be losing your mind if it was Hillary Clinton's national security advisor and he or she were arrested for fibbing. You're right. But, Chris, that'll never happen because Democrats aren't arrested for anything. Unmask your political opponents after you lose an election? No problem. Delete 33,000 emails. Have a private email server hacked. It's all good. They never get arrested. It's only Republicans who get arrested, by the way, for fibbing, while the Democrats get away with everything. It's a disgrace. Give me a break.
Yeah, destruction of evidence, etc. Dan Bongino, Chris Ham, thanks so much. And it's dominating news, but do you really understand the tax bill? DeRoy Murdoch is next, and we'll go into depth to explain the big win for the White House and what it means for you. Stay with justice. It's the just thing to do. Big win for the White House today as the Senate passes tax reform bill in the early hours of the morning. Here to break it all down, National Review Online contributing editor, co-founder of Keep Calm and CutTaxes.com, and Fox News contributor, DeRoy Murdoch. He joins me now. DeRoy, it's so good to have you in studio.
To see you.
Now, I've said this before. I know nothing about taxes. I don't understand it. So you're going to make it clear to me and to my viewers. Sure. Now, first of all, I want to talk about taxes. The big thing now is, first of all, the Senate passed, the House has passed. They've got to reconcile now. They have to get together. There are some differences between the House and the Senate. I don't really care about that right now because they have to work it out. And I don't want to think about it.
As President Trump calls it.
What is it? A beautiful committee.
A beautiful committee.
A beautiful committee. Yeah, we love that. Okay. Now, let's talk about SALT, state and local taxes.
Yeah.
So that primarily affects New York, New Jersey, California. Those are the Democrat states.
That's right.
Okay, I didn't say Democratic. I said Democrat states. Okay, so is the federal government saying, boo on you? You've got all these illegals living in your state. You've got all of these government programs. We're not going to let you benefit from anything. You're going to have to pay for all these programs.
Yeah. Well, I call SALT the state and local tax deduction. I call SALT the opiate of the overtaxed masses, essentially. What this does is people like us, New Yorkers, people in Jersey, California, the high-tax states, because we're able to write this off against our federal income taxes, it really decreases the amount of pain we'd feel. I think if I urge the conference committee just to get rid of this deduction and make it so that people in New York, New Jersey, California feel the full impact of these high taxes. And I think what will happen, all of our liberal friends are running around here in New York, Beverly Hills, Malibu, et cetera, they suddenly are going to turn into supply-siders, and they'll be calling up Mayor de Blasio, Governor Cuomo, Jerry Brown, and saying these taxes are too high, we're sick of paying this, you got to give us tax relief. And all of a sudden you're going to find liberal Democrats suddenly getting religion and calling for tax cuts.
You know, the guy who just won in New Jersey for governor, he ran on, I'm going to raise property taxes. And now we can't deduct that stuff. I mean, it's crazy. But let's talk about
actually,
this.
The head of the state Senate there, who's a liberal Democrat named Steve Sweeney, he said, listen, we got to take a second look at this millionaire tax because if we can't write it off against the state taxes, people are going to get up and move to Florida, move to Texas.
Everywhere
so you've got
else.
Democrats now saying maybe we can't raise taxes.
What about this claim that it's the rich versus the poor, only the rich are benefiting? Aren't the rich the ones primarily paying taxes?
That's exactly right. I think the top 1% in this country pay about 37% of income tax. The top 10% pay about 70%. So it's not surprising.
So who else is going to get the break?
Well, when you have a tax cut, the people who pay most of the taxes are going to get most of the cuts. That shouldn't be surprising. Now, there are going to be benefits for the middle class. The standard deduction goes up. The per-child tax credit increases. People are not going to have if it goes through the conference committee, the AMT, the alternative minimum tax, that's going to go away. So there are a lot of benefits as well
to the middle class.
But it shouldn't be surprising that most of the people who pay most of the taxes are going to get most of the cuts. That
all right. Now, I want to talk about how the left, the media, the mainstream media, and the left, with their lies and their exaggerations, actually impact the economy too. This latest thing with Brian Ross suggesting that the president directed Donald Flynn to contact Russia during the campaign. The significance of that.
Sure. The original story said that candidate Trump did this,
right?
Which means during the campaign, which suggests collusion and contacting the Kremlin to help him win the election. Later on in the day, they removed the word candidate. All of a sudden, it's President-elect Trump. And when President-elect Trump says to Flynn, please contact the Russians, he's basically saying, do your job, get in touch with these people, give them your business card, so after January 20th, when we're in the White House, you already will have established these connections.
Which is a legitimate thing to do.
Which you'd expect him to do.
Okay.
And in fact, he did this with about 30 other countries. So it's nothing at all unusual or inappropriate.
Final in the last 20 seconds, the Dow goes down 350 points when Brian Ross lies or misrepresents that Flynn is committing basically a crime at the behest of the president.
And then they correct it and the Dow goes back up.
Yeah. It goes back up. So you can't lie and not hurt the economy. At least
they should tell the truth and leave the economy alone. I think that's
right.
Good advice.
Rory Murdoch, great having you with us for the first time on Justice. All right, now what's the craziest thing you heard this week? I'll show you my entry next. My entry. You hear some pretty outrageous things on TV during the week, especially in this day and age. Take a look at Joy Behar on The View, reacting to what turned out to be fake breaking news reported by ABC.
ABC News' Brian Ross is reporting Michael Flynn promised full cooperation to the Mueller team and is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. Yes! He goes to jail. He goes to jail. He goes to jail. Lock him up. Lock them up. On election night, I had to wear a veil. I was in mourning. So this is like the antithesis of that hideous night. Well, and that's why I'm happy.
But that bit of so-called news wasn't exactly true, as we've been reporting tonight. But regardless of that, it's just another example of misinformation coming from the liberal left. Joining me now to talk about that and more is Michael Pirro, host of In the Foxlight. Good evening, Michael.
Hello, Jeanine. Well, you are on fuego tonight.
What is your take of Joy Behar? You know, he goes to jail, dancing about this.
I mean, tossing around the cards and the whole thing. I mean, hats off to Robert Mueller for one thing. He actually got Joy Behar to live up to her first name. I mean, have you ever met someone more or less joyful in your life? And she's just such an angry person on a daily basis, and there she is cheering on what could be a constitutional crisis, tossing around index cards like Rip Taylor on the Gong Show, although I have to say Rip Taylor had a better mustache than Joy. I mean, it's really the height of irresponsibility in my mind.
Okay, all right. And now I want to call for another sound. Joe Scarborough, I want you to take a listen to this outrageous comment.
We are facing a showdown with a nuclear power, and you have somebody inside the White House that the New York Daily News says is mentally unfit, that people close to him say is mentally unfit, that people close to him during the campaign told me had early stages of dementia.
Hit it, Michael.
You know, the thing about Joe Scarborough is he's one of those guys who thinks he knows everything about everything and everyone, but he's really the master of nothing. And should a guy who sort of styles himself as a cross between Dilbert and the Muppet Beaker really be calling into question the president's mental health? You know, this has been sort of a steady drumbeat with him on his show, calling for the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment. Really, another person, another media elitist calling for a constitutional crisis. I call into question some of the standards of NBC News on this sort of thing. But then again, I mean, they also did not air Ronan Farrow's piece on Harvey Weinstein. So,
And, you know, I'll tell you, the fact that he quotes the Daily News. He says the Daily News says that Donald Trump is mentally unfit. Well, that's the end of it. From now on, in all criminal cases across courtrooms in this country, they shouldn't call in psychiatrists to say if someone's mentally unfit. They should just call 1-800 the Daily News. They shouldn't waste their money. You know? All right. And what about finally, what do you think about Brian Ross's reporting, you know, saying that Michael Flynn has actually is going to testify against Donald Trump? I mean, forget about Joy Behar's reaction, but the actual reporting by one of the most, you know, trophied investigative reporters on television today.
You know, Jeanine, we're making light. We're having a little fun with some of this stuff, but this is not funny stuff. These are very serious issues, and our freedom is incumbent on the media getting it right. Democracy demands that we in the media get it right, and they all, Brian Ross, Joy Behar, Joe Scarborough, all of them have to act in a more responsible way. We've seen. You
know, and the shame of it is, as I said, Michael, with my last guest, DeRoy Murdoch, I mean, when that, you know, false reporting came out that Flynn was going to be testifying against the president, you know, based upon a claim that he was directed to contact Russia during the campaign as opposed to when he was president, or in the transition, which is perfectly legitimate, the Dow suffered a 350-point drop. I mean, this is serious stuff, and it's not just about the hatred of the left toward the right.
No, well, words matter, whether they be printed or spoken. And look, journalism is not for the lazy. You know, journalism requires a lot of work. You got to check your sources, and it's not for zealots.
All right. Michael Pirro, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and we'll be right back. Finally, Finally tonight, don't forget to friend me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at Judge_Jeanine. And you never have to miss justice. If you can't watch, just set your DVR. Thanks so much for watching. See you next Saturday night. I'm Jeanine Pirro, advocating for truth, justice, and the American way. The Greg Gutfeld Show is next.